Hi. With less than 1 week to go for the RBI DEPR Phase 2 exam, this video is intended to discuss the examination pattern, some tips for answer writing, and to answer some of your queries. So let's begin. So this is how we will proceed in this video. First, we will discuss the examination pattern, and then we will discuss some aspects of answer writing. Moving on. Although in 2023, RBI has modified the examination pattern, but careful observation tells us that it has a lot in common with the examination pattern of previous years. The detailed examination pattern is given in the information handout released by RBI. You should read every word given in that information handout very carefully. Here we are just going to summarize it. So as you already know that in stage 2, that is in phase 2, you have to appear for 2 papers, morning shift and afternoon shift. The details are given in this table. So 2 papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 consists of micro and macro, and paper 2 consists of quantitative skills and Indian economy. Now, you already know that the questions will be displayed on the computer screen and you have to write answers on paper using a pen, right? There will be 5 questions which you have to attempt in each of these papers. Total marks for each of these papers is 100 and time limit you already know is 120 minutes, which is 2 hours. Moving on. Now let's talk about paper 1 first. So paper 1 will have 2 sections. The first section will be on microeconomics and the second section will be on macroeconomics. In each of these sections, you know, there are 4 questions having 20 marks allotted to it for each question, right? Now, the next part is that there will be choice, right? So you will have 8 questions in front of you, 4 here and 4 here. Out of these 8 questions, you have to attempt any 5 with the condition that you have to attempt at least 2 questions from each section. That means out of the 2 sections, A and B, in one of these sections, you will have to attempt 2 questions, and in one of these sections, you will have to attempt 3, right? So from where to attempt 2, where to attempt 3, that's of course your choice. So the moment you begin your exam, the first thing should be just scroll through all the questions, see how many questions are there. Of course, that's already told, but just see which all the questions are. Read all the question and decide which ones you want to answer and which ones you do not want to answer. So in your rough space, just write that from section A, I'm going to do this question, and from section B, I'm going to do this question. So at a later stage, you will not have to spend or waste time on seeing which all to attempt. So spend 2 minutes in the beginning and decide which questions you want to do. Of course, there might be some confusion. If that happens, then you can take that decision at a later date, okay, at a later time. Also, next thing is how many words or what is the word limit. What I have been told by candidates who appeared in previous years, RBI did not use to specify the word limit, right? Now, it's not necessary that they will stick to this only even in the upcoming paper. Of course, they can change it and they can specify the word limit. So if the word limit is specified, then you already know how many words you have to write. You are not in any confusion. Theoretically, if let's say the word limit is not specified, then you look at it in terms of time. You know that you have around 24 minutes per question. So let's say there is a question and it has only one part. So you know you have 24 minutes to write. Let's say if it has 2 parts, then you will divide the time accordingly. You have 12 minutes to be devoted to each. If there are 3, of course, these things you can divide on your own. So in short, have a look at it in terms of time limit and decide how much time you want to allocate. And suppose you have 2 parts and you are devoting 12 minutes to each, then within these 12 limits, write the best answer you can. It's not only going to be about the word limit. If word limit was the only thing to be considered, then they would have specified it in the question paper itself. They might do it as well. If they do not do it, then do not be so concerned about the word limit. You have 12 minutes or whatever number of minutes you have for each part. do as well as you can, write as much as you can. That should be your goal, right? So also it's not कि भाई अगर 24 marks का question है तो 50 words ही लिख के आ गए. I mean, of course you understand these are extreme examples I'm giving you, but just to clarify the issue better. So if you want a guiding principle, if you have a look at IAS paper, then for a question in which you have to put the answer in 100 words, you have around 4.5 minutes to write it. Okay. Similarly, for questions on which you have around 13.5 minutes to spend, this is 200 words. And approximately for 18 minutes, if you have time, then you spend or you write 300 words. Okay. So more or less, the guidelines can be somewhat similar even here. So let's say you have only one question. I mean, there is only one part. So for that particular question, you have 24 minutes. Now, even if you write 300 sensible words, it is going to be okay. If you can write between 300 and 400 words somewhere here, let's say 350 or whatever, 370, even that is fine, right? So approximately take the IAS paper as the guideline in case word limit is not specified. If RBI specifies the word limit, then that issue is already resolved. Now, a similar approach you will have to follow even for the other paper. Let's say paper 2, section 1 is going to be on quantitative methods and section B is going to be on Indian economy. So even here, you have a similar situation, 25 or 24 minutes per question, and you have to write answers to 5 questions out of the 8 given to you. Again, the same condition, at least 2 questions from each section. So even here, you have to follow a similar method. Moving on. In the information handout itself, RBI has given sample question as well. So for paper 1, this is the sample question which they have provided, and for paper 2, this is the sample question which they have provided. So now if you have to answer this question, you already understand how to approach. And if you talk about, let's say, word limit for this, then there is only one question. If you answer it between 300 to 400 words, it's going to suffice. That's going to work out well. But just consider it like this. For this particular question, I feel word limit is not that important because you already know what you have to write. You have to explain monopoly equilibrium for a linear demand curve. Now, इसमें जो है आप वही बता पाओगे. बहुत ज़्यादा इधर उधर की बातें लिखने का स्कोप है नहीं क्योंकि क्वेश्चन क्लियर है, राइट? आपको समझाना है, डेफिनेशंस देनी है, डायग्राम बनाना है, वो तो करना ही पड़ेगा. वर्ड लिमिट कितनी भी हो, अगर एक क्वेश्चन है जिससे आपको 24 मिनट दिखानी है, पेंट करनी है, then I think for this question, at least I am clear on what I have to write. Now, word limit might be somewhat more relevant for questions pertaining to Indian economy, right? Even for quant section, it might not be so relevant. But for Indian economic portion, you might feel कि हाँ अगर word limit बताया हो तो हमें exactly idea है कितना खींचना है बात को. ठीक है, अगर word limit mentioned होगा, then follow the word limit specified. If it is not specified, then follow what we have discussed on the previous slide, right? So this is the sample question which they have provided in 2023. In 2022 also, they have provided some sample question. I'm just putting it here for your reference. Moving on. So these were the questions given as sample questions in 2022, right? Now, for these questions, for example, first of all, there were 2 questions under first part. First question, there were 2 parts. So part A and part B having 10 marks each. Next, for these questions, for example, for question 1, I do not think word limit is any issue. I have clear idea of what I have to write, and I don't think I will think about word limit while framing an answer. Of course, for Indian economy paper, if you know the word limit, it is far easier. But even if you are not specified in the question, it's okay, it's manageable. You will be able to decide what to write and what not to write. Also notice that the portion from which these questions have been asked. For example, this is a clear question from your Mundell-Fleming model, and this is from the ISLM portion. Okay, both these topics were considered to be the most important sections, let's say 1 or 2 years back. And in fact, you will see, if you talk to the students appearing that year, you would have known that मेंटालिटी होती थी हमारी कि ISLM का क्वेश्चन तो आना ही आना है न्यूमेरिकल, और मंडल टाइमिंग से भी आएगा ही आएगा. ऑफ कोर्स पिछले 1-2 साल में इन्होंने बेशक ना पूछा हो, बट even these portions remain very important even for all the examinations, right? So now let's move ahead. What items to carry in the examination hall? You've been through phase 1, so you have a good understanding already that you have to carry your admission letter with photo affix and photo ID in original as well as one photocopy. Separate admission letters for each shift. Now, this is one aspect wherein you have been sending many queries. Ballpoint pens of same color ink for writing the papers. Some of the queries can be not use two color pens, for example, blue for writing and black for underlining and stuff, or black for writing subheadings and all that. Second query can be not use pencils to write, or let's say pencils to underline or to draw diagrams. Let's discuss that on the next slide. Okay, and use of simple calculators is permitted for phase 2, and they will be made available online on the screen only for candidates. Moving on. RBI has also told us what are the permitted items. So that includes mask, sanitizer, a simple pen and ink stamp pad, exam related documents, admission letter should be brought with the photocopy, and scribe form and or letter of undertaking. No other items are permitted inside the venue. So if you take it on word, it says pencils are not allowed to be carried inside. In practice, sometimes things can be different. For example, consider my case. I just wanted to try if all this is sacrosanct, because all these instructions were there even for phase 1. So I thought, let me try if I can take the pencil inside the examination hall. I tried that, and the security guard said कि pencils allowed नहीं है. I said, भैया pencil ही तो है, कौन सी आफत आ जाएगी? And then he got busy with other candidates twist करने में, and I took it inside. Similarly, they have not specified anything about, let's say, a ruler, whether you can take it if you want to draw straight lines in the diagram, etc. Now, so in such a situation, and combine that with the fact that when we go for UPSC, IES exam, all these things are allowed, right? Similarly, when we write other exams, not IBPS exams, other exams, you will see that these things can be carried inside the examination hall, and people use a pencil to draw diagrams only. So with that background, if you want to be absolutely on the safe side in that case, and if you want to go by what is written, in that case, you should carry only a single pen, and even for drawing diagrams and all those things, use that only. And if you can carry a ruler, it will be useful. You can draw straight lines wherever you need using that ruler if you want to be on a safe side. I also spoke to some selected candidates, and of course, many of you might also have appeared for phase 2 already, maybe last year. And in there, you already know if you carried the pencil and the black pen or not. You already know your marks. So there will be many candidates who actually use them. So I spoke to a few candidates. They said they used a black pen, and some of them also confirmed using a pencil, okay, in the examination. Instructions from RBI were similar even in the previous years. I'm attaching the information handout of previous years. You can go through them. Instructions were very similar last time also. So I asked one candidate, like, why did you use a pencil or a black pen? Did you not read the instructions? So that person said, कि पढ़ा ही नहीं था instructions. So he said कि IAS दिया था कुछ टाइम पहले, और IAS में अलाउड ही था, तो इतना ना इंस्ट्रक्शंस पढ़ने का सोचा और ना मतलब कहीं और से सुना. So I went, took the pen inside, black pen, took the pencil also inside, and I was not stopped. At the same time, there were some people who were selected and they did not use a pencil or a black pen, right? So in short, if I was in your shoes, I will not use a black pen or a pencil. I will use only a blue pen. But just to confirm the things, what I will do is, so when I leave my bag outside, I will carry a ruler, a pencil and all those things, दिखाकर, मतलब छुपाकर नहीं, पूरा properly दिखाकर ये सब चीजें हाथ में लेकर जाऊँ. If they categorically tell me कि ये सब allowed नहीं है, नहीं ले जाना, then it's okay. I clearly know that I tried taking them inside. And if it's not allowed, then what to do? So it's absolutely clear then that it is not to be used at all. At least that's what the instruction is from higher ups. On the other hand, if no one tells me anything, and if I manage to take it till the examination hall, then I might still be confused. Should I use it? Should I not use it? Now, there is no problem in using the ruler. Right? No one will know कि straight line है, तो ruler से बनाया है, तो let's penalize this person. If you are unsure about pencil and black pen, it's fine. Even if you do not use them, it will not harm you from examination point of view. Right? So again, if you are sure about something, follow that thing. If you are not sure and if you want to be on the safer side, this is what I would suggest you. Okay. So now let's move ahead. Now let's discuss answer writing in brief. So what are the components of the perfect answer? First thing, it has to start with the pen. You should know that in the examination hall, you will only be allowed to carry pens which are transparent or whose outer body is transparent. For example, let's say pilot pens that we use. First of all, those are gel pens. Second, body is not transparent. So you might not be allowed to take them inside. Similarly, most of the Parker pens that we get, body is not transparent. So those will not be allowed. Something like a butterfly, that will work fine. Okay, because its outer body is transparent, at least some portion is transparent, and the security guard will check if there is some portion which is transparent. So that will work. And in fact, on a lighter note, if you have been using the butterfly, the same pen for the past few months, not just some part, most of it would have become transparent by now, right? Because the outer covering would have gone. So just be clear with what pens you want to carry, because even in phase 1 exam, I saw that many candidates were carrying pens and water bottles which were not transparent, and security guard was sending them back, right? So I just thought I'll mention it once. Apart from that, we now come to the main discussion. Like discussed in the essay course, the components of the answer remain the same even here, right? So first portion has to be a good introduction. It should clearly communicate what the future part of the essay or future part of the answer is going to look like. So see that it gets linked to the question, right? And it should get linked to the body of the answer also. Many a times we try to be fancy, and from the answers that I have evaluated, some of them have been such that introduction is good, but not meeting the demand of the question, or it is not getting linked to the body. So such questions or such introductions are not very effective because you're using some space, right? Suppose you had 200 words to write. Now you spent whatever, 20, 30 words in writing the introduction. If that introduction is not useful to answer the question, or it is not getting linked to the body part, then it is not effective. You just wasted those 20, 30 words. वो सिर्फ जगह भरने का काम कर रहे हैं, कोई पर्पस उन्होंने सर्व नहीं किया. It is in the body part that you have to build ahead of the intro, and it should cater to the primary demand of the question. So it can include different aspects such as causes, effects, what the government has been doing to address this situation. If you talk of a question from Indian economy section, the question should end, or the answer should end with a well-balanced conclusion. So you can also offer some forward-looking approach. For example, you've already said in the body portion what the government is already doing. If you can offer some other workable solutions or workable plan that the government can look to do or look to follow in future, that's also going to add. If you want to link it to some of the established targets by the government, for example, having a developed India by so-and-so date, or having a net zero economy by so-and-so date, sustainable development goals, Atmanirbhar Bharat, all those things can also be done. But it should not sound like too rhetoric, right? That's not what it should sound like. It should sound like it is realistic and you are adopting a balanced approach, right? One of the most important aspects is maintaining the flow. So if your introduction is not getting linked to the body part, if body is not getting linked to the conclusion part, then the flow is not right. Similarly, if you've written 5 paragraphs and those paragraphs are not getting linked to each other, So from the first, the second should follow, and from second, third should follow. So it should look that it is flowing smoothly. That answer is fun to read, enjoyable to read. If it does not get linked, then it is not clear what you are trying to say, and the examiner will not enjoy reading. If that happens, relatively lower marks. Next is presentation. You already know that the examiner will have many copies to evaluate. So it's not that the person will, ideally it should happen, but it's not going to happen that the person will spend too much time in finding the main points of your answers. अच्छा ये लिखा है कि नहीं लिखा, अच्छा ये तो नहीं लिखा, ये लिखा है ये नहीं लिखा. So the examiner will not go into all that. Okay, no person who is evaluating the answers will do that. You have to write your answers in a way that it is easy for the examiner to find the important points. Okay, so let's discuss a few aspects of presentation now. So the first point is, try to mention the important points first and then elaborate upon it. For example, recall that in the micro descriptive test that we took, there was a question on backward bending labor supply curve. So in that, to answer that question, one of the possible approaches is that you give the answer, the main points first. For example, first you tell them that the labor faces a choice between working hours and leisure. And you tell that the wage rate is the opportunity cost, right? Now, next you will say that the net result depends upon the interaction between substitution effect and income effect. So substitution effect does this, income effect does this. Then you say that when the wage rate is lower, then one effect dominates the other. When the wage rate goes high, then the second effect dominates the other. Consequently, the labor supply curve is backward bending. So straightforward and precise. It is, so now I'll tell you that there were some candidates who have tried to build a mathematical model to communicate this. Now, there is nothing wrong with having a mathematical model. But the problem is, the examiner will be looking for the answer from the word go. The moment the examiner is reading your answer or your points, the examiner will be trying to find, अच्छा इसमें answer कहाँ लिखा है. Now, if you have given one introductory sentence saying that हम पहले mathematical model बनाएंगे जिसमें हम ये देखेंगे, उसके बाद मतलब we will discuss its conclusion, ऐसा कुछ. Still, you can say कि अच्छा examiner will have some clarity. But suppose you have not even written one introductory sentence and you start writing, building the mathematical model. Examiner is not going to enjoy reading such an answer. Okay. So I suggest that you try to write the important points first and then elaborate upon it. Of course, it's not necessary that this rule will work everywhere. Sometimes you might want to build upon something. That's also possible. For example, let's say you are solving a numerical. Let's say you're solving a question from microeconomics only and you want to solve for the equilibrium of a monopoly. Now you know that solve तो करना ही पड़ेगा. अगर इक्विलिब्रियम प्राइस और क्वांटिटी पूछा हुआ है तो आप शुरुआत से तो नहीं बोल सकते, but still have a conclusion. So still have an introduction. An introduction is relevant even for numericals. It is relevant even for mathematical questions. Now, when I'm saying introduction, it need not be 5-6 sentences. Even if you write just one sentence, the examiner should be clear of what to expect from future part. For example, if you're solving a monopoly question, just define monopoly. Single seller of the product having no close substitutes. How is the equilibrium determined? You say that we see the addition to total revenue and addition to total cost. So when marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, that's the necessary condition for equilibrium. And if you want to mention the second order condition also. This will be 2 sentences, but you build upon it because now you will be solving for the equilibrium price and quantity. So now examiner can make sense of why you are calculating total revenue and marginal cost. Instead, there can be also someone who does not write any introductory sentence and just शुरुआत किया TR ये है भाई, MR ये है भाई, MC ये रहा, आंसर आ गया. ठीक है. If you are doing that in rough, that's fine. But if you are doing that in the examination paper, it's not going to be useful. Because if the examiner was interested only in your answer, So phase 1 में ही 2-3 क्वेश्चन वो लोग और बढ़ा देते हैं. So that's not what the examiner wants to look at. The examiner wants to look at your presentation. The examiner wants to understand whether, so it's about presentation skills tell a lot about people. If you can present something properly, if you can write a good answer, be it a numerical, be it any Indian economy question. If you can write a good answer, there is a high probability that you already understand what are important points, what are not important points which have to be excluded from the write-up. Similarly, you also understand how to structure it. Similarly, you also understand how to make it flow. If you have these things with you, then there is a high probability that even when you are writing the chapters for RBI reports, you might end up doing a good job. Even when you are putting office notes for approval, you might already end up doing a good job. Okay. So that means presentation matters, and that's what they will be looking at. Make the task of the examiner simple. Do not keep the examiner guessing. Okay. Next, like I mentioned, intro and conclusion is relevant even for a quantitative techniques portion, right? So if you have a question from there, at least I would prefer to give a brief introduction. A brief introduction need not to be even 2 sentences. Even if it is just a single sentence, small sentence that too, not a big sentence, just a single small sentence, I think it is going to serve a purpose. And I would personally not write TRMR from the word go. First, I would write it like this only. Full form, total revenue, and is equal to price multiplied by quantity. Right, that's what I would do. After that, I can use TR, P and Q or an MR. Wherever I'm using an abbreviation for the first time, I like to introduce it. Okay, so I suggest you also to follow that approach only. Next, underline and make boxes to highlight important points. So now many of you might have been using a black pen for underlining. So that is ruled out. It does not matter. If you have to underline, you can underline with a blue pen only, right? So I have written comments in many sheets or many papers that underline. And so how to underline, first of all? So it's not necessary that you have to underline as you write. For example, let's say you're writing a sentence and you feel that this is an important point. So it's not necessary that you have to underline it immediately. For example, I personally prefer to write the entire answer first. Once you have written the entire answer, then decide what all things you want to highlight. So whatever you want to highlight, you can do it using different ways. So what are the different ways of highlighting an answer or important points in an answer? First, so if you are using only a single pen, that is the blue pen. And mind you, in IAS and all, still people tell you that you use pencil, you can use pencil or black pen. But when we write or when people write UPSC Civil Services mains exam, there no one uses any other pen because time limit is such that people are just running against time and no one has the time to pick up a different pen again and again. So people do everything with that same pen, most of them. So even when they're drawing the map of India, forget about simple diagrams that we are talking about. Even when they're drawing the map of India, they use the same blue pen only. Of course, in UPSC, there are people who prefer to use the colored pencil for highlighting. All those things for us, we are not doing any here. Okay. So now what are the different ways we can highlight some points? So just if you want, you have a blue pen in your hand, just put some lines like this, underlining. This is one way. If you want to make something different, you can put double lines. But again, that increases some workload from, at least that's what I see it. It increases my workload for putting 2 lines. And if the lines are not parallel, then sometimes it does not look good. So I avoid doing that. This is one way. The other way is you can put something like this. So instead of a straight line, something like this. Or like you, maybe there are better artists than me, but you got what I wanted to say, right? Something like this can also be like underlining only, but not exactly a straight line. Also, you can make boxes. So for example, if you want to highlight this portion, you put it in a box, right? So there are many things you can do with the same color only. So decide what works better for you. You can give it a try and then reach the decision. Okay. Next, explain and diagrams wherever relevant. So if you're drawing a diagram, okay, let's say you've drawn the monopoly diagram. Now, if you just leave it like this, it is not going to make any sense. First of all, you have to label all the important points. Even if you feel something is not very important and कहीं intersection आ रहा है, label it, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, ठीक है? Wherever possible, wherever required, do all sorts of things to make the diagram neat. You have to write a title, that's mandatory. Wherever required, you also have to explain. मतलब suppose अगर आपने कोई explanation लिखा इस diagram के basis पे और इस diagram का जिक्र तक नहीं किया कुछ explanation में, then इस diagram का मतलब ही क्या है? एग्जामिनर ने आपका कंटेंट देखा, उसने पढ़ लिया, इसका कहीं जिक्र आया नहीं, वो पढ़ के निकल जाएगा, ठीक है? आइडियली आपके आंसर में अगर थोड़ा भी जिक्र है ना, एज शोन इन फिगर 2.3 ऐसा कुछ भी, तो थोड़ा हो जाता है कि अच्छा उसने जिक्र कर दिया, चलो लेट मी हैव अ लुक एट इट, राइट? आप आंसर्स देखते हो, आप आरबीआई के रिपोर्ट्स पढ़ते हो, वहां भी देखो डायग्राम्स मेंशन होते हैं, राइट अप में भी कि जिक्र होता है कि इस डायग्राम को देखो, इसके बारे में ये बता रहा हूँ आपको। ऐसा नहीं होता कि भैया हमने तो बना दिया है, अब तुम्हारी समझ है, तुम इंटेलिजेंट हो तो देख लो, कॉमन सेंस है, मैंने बनाया है तो देखना ही होगा, एंड इट डजंट वर्क लाइक दैट, राइट? सो आंसर में एक छोटा सा भी जिक्र है तो कनेक्ट कर दो उसको अपने डायग्राम से, इट इज इजी टू सी. नाउ हाउ टू how to give the title. Giving the title you already know. If you want to give the figure number also, just give it question wala. So if you are attempting question number 2, just write figure 2, and if you feel figure इसमें 2-3 आने वाली है तो figure 2.1, ठीक है, बात खत्म, simple. Okay, next, write assumptions explicitly wherever they are involved, right? For example, let's say you're doing a mathematical derivation of, let's say, IS or LM curve. There you are making assumptions, right? For example, when you are writing your consumption function in this way, you already made some assumptions about the consumption function. So write them explicitly. Or if you are assuming investment to be of this type, you again making some assumptions. So the only thing is you should know clearly which assumptions you are making. You should be conscious about them and write them wherever relevant. It's not necessary that you have to write long sentences for these things. No. Even if you just write, let's assume, or you just write assuming, sorry for the handwriting, you just write assuming and you put this, C as this, I as this, that also gives a clarity that you are making some assumptions and you know that you are making some assumptions and you are mentioning them explicitly, right? So all the assumptions that you are making in models, it's best to mention them explicitly and be precise and stick to the time limit, right? So now let's move ahead. Now I want to end by saying a few important points. First of all, you might be having some inhibitions in your mind. That's fine. It is a part of the process, but it's not necessary that it would be having some relationship with the reality also. Most likely, वो बस इसलिए है inhibitions कि आप थोड़ा भी stressed हो या थोड़ा low feel कर रहे हो. For example, someone might be having the inhibitions कि यार phase 2 का syllabus पूरा नहीं है, ये छूट गया, ये भी पढ़ने का time नहीं है, वो revise नहीं किया, and all those things. Someone else might be feeling low because of present result. इससे मान लो IAS का result expect positive किया था, नहीं आया, तो मन उदास है. या someone else might be thinking about previous result and getting upset कि last year interview दिया था, नहीं हुआ, इस बार भी क्या guarantee है, all those things. See, inhibitions for most candidates are a part of life. In fact, not just candidates, I mean, just think about real life. हम सबकी जिंदगी में कुछ ना कुछ insecurities और inhibitions तो होते ही है. So it's okay. जितने कैंडिडेट्स से जितने भी हम लोग सब लोग हैं, जो लोग मन में इनहिबिशंस हैं, हम ही में से कुछ लोग सिलेक्ट होने वाले हैं, राइट? सो इनहिबिशंस मन में है वो ठीक है, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली आप you yourself know that even with inhibitions there's a high probability that if you utilize what you already have stored in your brain, if you do well, if you execute well during those 4 hours, you yourself know that you're capable of doing a very good job, right? So throw away your inhibitions and just focus on maximizing on what you can do. Second point is about not letting any one negative side on that day affect the rest of your paper. For example, sometimes it happens that let's say we are traveling by cab and cab thoda delay ho gaya and traffic मिल गया and all those things. We said low probability in the morning, but still कुछ भी ऐसा हुआ जिसकी वजह से मूड खराब हुआ और मूड खराब होने से एग्जाम खराब नहीं होने देना है अगर कुछ होता है ऐसा. तो सपोज एग्जाम में आप बैठे और आपने पेपर शुरू किया एंड यू रियलाइज के इन पेपर 1 यू नो आंसर वेरी वेल टू 4 क्वेश्चंस, बट 5वें क्वेश्चन का आंसर अच्छे से नहीं आता. स्टिल इट्स फाइन. मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि एक क्वेश्चन को थोड़ा कम आता होगा तो इट इज गोइंग टू बी ruining योर एंटायर पेपर. बिकॉज सी दिस इज एन कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जाम. इसमें एक फेज 1 है, फेज 2 है और इंटरव्यू है. हु नोज, आपका मान लो अगर आपको एक क्वेश्चन अच्छे से नहीं आता है, इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी दैट यू विल लीव इट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इंडियन इकोनॉमी का कोई क्वेश्चन बहुत अच्छे से नहीं आता है, यू ऑलरेडी नो दैट कॉमन सेंस यूज करके कुछ स्कीम्स याद करके गवर्नमेंट की अलग अलग पॉइंट्स को साथ में रख के एक अच्छा सा आंसर आप लिख पाओगे. हो सकता है पूरे फैक्ट्स आप ना लिख पाओ, बट लेट्स से समवन हु इज एबल टू राइट वेरी गुड फैक्ट्स might end, let's say, with 13 marks in that question. Even if you are not able to write, you might get, let's say, 6 marks. ठीक है, 6-7 नंबर का फर्क है. आपको नहीं मालूम है 6-7 नंबर जो आपने मान लो अगर लूज कर भी दिए किसी क्वेश्चन में, आप कहाँ मेकअप कर लोगे. Who knows, इंटरव्यू में if you reach interview stage, you might end up getting the full 75. And जिस कैंडिडेट ने यहाँ 13 लिखे हैं उसको थोड़े कम भी मिल सकते हैं. So in short, the bottom line is, even if something does not go well on that day, कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं आता, कहीं कोई डॉक्यूमेंट कुछ ऐसा होगा जिसके जो टेम्पररी है, मतलब मॉर्निंग में लेट हुए लेकिन एग्जाम सेंटर पे टाइम पे पहुंच गए, थोड़ा लेट थे लेकिन टाइम पे पहुंचे, तो दैट्स फाइन, राइट. तो कुछ ऐसा टेम्पररी इश्यू हो जाता है अप एंड डाउन, तो डोंट लेट इट अफेक्ट योर एंटायर एग्जाम. थ्रू आउट द डे रिमेन कॉन्फिडेंट. आपको 4 सेक्शंस लिखने हैं डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड इन 2 डिफरेंट पेपर्स. जो गैप होगा बीच में, ट्राई टू यूटिलाइज इट टू द बेस्ट पॉसिबल इन द बेस्ट पॉसिबल वे. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ फॉर द सेकंड पेपर यू हैव सम शॉर्ट नोट्स, try to sit and read them. For example, if you've made some notes for Indian economy, try to read them. Okay, Indian economy के लिए okay, let's discuss it first. Now about quant portion. One thing that I want to communicate is it's possible that you might end up making some calculation mistake, and calculation mistakes हो जाती हैं. That's a part of it. ठीक है, even if I sit to do some questions, it's possible I might make some mistakes. Even the examiner who is setting your paper, if you make that person solve the paper, there is possibility that my person might be doing some calculation with. That's fine, okay. But if you can avoid it, it's the best. For example, even if you think of your the test that we conducted last weekend on portal, if you have seen the answers and compared your answers with the solutions that I shared with you on the app, you would have seen that many people have made calculation mistakes. Now, calculation mistakes can happen, but try to avoid it. For example, on the exam day, the ideal thing is wherever feasible, once you have calculated the answer, and let's say it's about solving some equations, at least put them in the equation and see कि answer बन रहा है कि नहीं बन रहा, कोई calculation mistake तो नहीं है. Now, the problem with that approach is कि suppose you find calculation mistake है, answer ठीक नहीं, मतलब ये answer जब so suppose you substitute or calculate some value of x, and when you substitute it back, you are not able to find ये गड़बड़ है. अब वहाँ पे पैनिक नहीं करना है. चाहो तो लास्ट स्टेप में करो ये कैलकुलेशन चेकिंग, जहाँ आपको ये लगे कि अगर मिस्टेक मिली भी तो बाकी पेपर अफेक्ट नहीं होगा. या अगर आप चाहो तो शुरुआत में ही देख लो, लेकिन अपने आप को ये प्रॉमिस करो कि मतलब इस क्वेश्चन के चक्कर में इस एक्स की वैल्यू जो गलत आ रही है, यू विल ट्राई टू फाइंड इट, बट इवन इफ यू डू नॉट फाइंड इट विद इन टाइम, आप पैनिक नहीं करो. इफ यू वांट, लीव दिस थिंग्स फॉर द एंड. इट्स अप टू यू. प्लान हाउ यू वांट टू गो अबाउट इट, बट डू नॉट लेट दिस अफेक्ट योर एंटायर पेपर. As far as possible, try to see या calculation mistakes ना करो. Be vigilant about it. Next is about Indian economy. So Indian economy में I suggest that you prepare some fodder. आपने already किया हुआ होगा. Now what you will do is, ideally एक बार सोच लो क्या क्या चीजें भारत में या भारत की इकोनॉमी के रिगार्डिंग सुधार की आवश्यकता है, और जस्ट रन थ्रू इट इन योर ब्रेन. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, थिंक अच्छा फिस्कल डेफिसिट अगर लो है, fiscal deficit अगर high है, तो how will I control it? If I am asked in the exam, suggest some measures to control fiscal deficit, what will I suggest? Similarly, current account deficit को अगर मुझे कंट्रोल रखना है तो मैं क्या सजेस्ट करूँगा? If I want to correct, let's say, rupee depreciation, how will I correct it? Like, what are the steps I'm going to suggest to do these things? अगर मुझे growth rate बढ़ाना है इकोनॉमी का, what suggestions will I give? If I want to bring down poverty, what suggestions will I give? Similarly, unemployment कम करना है, what suggestions will I give? So in सब And this is not an exhaustive list. Similarly, और चीजें आप सोच सकते हो. Similarly, inflation, the most important right now. For all these things, you should be having some information on trend. पिछले वक्त इसमें कैसा रहा है, आउटलुक, भविष्य के कुछ वक्त में कैसा रहने की उम्मीद है. आरबीआई के जो लिंक्स वी शेयर्ड ऑन टेलीग्राम चैनल, आई थिंक वहां से कुछ कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन आप निकाल पाओ, राइट. और स्टेप्स, ये क्या स्टेप्स आप सजेस्ट कर सकते हो इनको इम्प्रूव करने के लिए. अगेन आई एम टेलिंग यू, दिस लिस्ट इज नॉट एग्जॉस्टेड. यू कैन ऐड अ फ्यू पॉइंट्स इन दैट लिस्ट. इस पे कोई डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन नहीं भी आता है ना. If you have the fodder, you might use it to write introduction or to write conclusion somewhere, or you might want to fit it somewhere at least, right? Schemes भी आती हैं question में, तो थोड़ा थोड़ा पढ़ के जाना, important schemes. So now at the end, all that I will tell you is, you जितना आपको आता है, अगर आप उतना अच्छे से execute कर पाओगे, you will do well in the exam. So that's what your focus should be. Avoid getting into any sort of inhibitions, insecurities. Just try to study as much as you can. Plan the day well, for example, how you will travel and all those things, right? And I think all those basic stuff, what to carry, what not to carry, you already have clarity on. I wish you all the very best for this exam. I sincerely hope that you manage to do your best. Okay, so now let's stop here.